Hey guys, so we are back with this Buick Encore. It's the one that I put that caliper on, the rear brakes, bled the system. We put a brand new purge valve on it, and I'm looking at it once again, but I'm not at my garage. I'm actually on site here, and that's because her AC doesn't work. It was at my garage just like 2 days ago, and I'm trying to figure out why the AC doesn't blow, because the AC compressor kicks on whenever you push the AC button inside, and I pretty much checked all of the blender actuators, make sure everything was working, because when you put the temperature to hot, it gets like boiling hot, right, hot air. When you put it to cold, it doesn't really get cold. It gets cooler, but it's still blowing out warm air. It's why I wanted to double check all of the blender actuators. And then I told her, you know what, I can't figure it out, you may have to take it to a shop. But then like an hour after she left, it just kind of dawned on me, I forgot to check the cooling fans for the radiator, which, you know, whenever you turn on your AC, the cooling fan is supposed to kick in. So I don't want to say or tell her that if this fan is bad, yeah, it's gonna fix your AC, but if it doesn't work, it's definitely a problem. I don't know if it will be the problem. I hope that makes sense. This thing has two relays for two different fan speeds, one here and another one right here that I already removed. As you can see, I got my jumper in place, and I don't think you need to have the power on inside the car, but I went ahead and turned the key on anyway, just to, you know, make sure we're getting power to everything. So you can see the switch says off. I'm gonna go ahead and hit on right now, and you can see no cooling fan. See, that switch is now turned on and nothing at all. That cooling fan is not turning on, so that would be, let's see, relay number 3. It would be cooling fan mid speed. Okay, so number 8, which would be down here, is cooling fan low speed. Let's go ahead and check that one. Okay, so right now we are turned off, as you can see. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the switch, and again, nothing. No fan. So this is definitely a issue. Like I said, this cooling fan needs to be working. It needs to be turned on whenever the AC kicks in, and this could be the root cause of why her AC just stopped working. She said it stopped working maybe like a week before I did all that work on the brakes, so it's pretty recent that the AC, she said one day she was just driving and it just stopped working. Let's see if we could do any other simple tests here. Okay, so I found another set of relays underneath this cover. I wasn't sure what it was, so I decided to check. And if you look inside of here closely, it actually says cooling fan control relay and cooling fan control relay 2. So I grabbed my other jumper, put it on here, and nothing at all from the fan. Now we still have the key in the on position, so let's check the other one, and still nothing. This cooling fan does not turn on at all. And unfortunately, I only brought a handful of tools with me, so I can't really, you know, test everything that I want to test. But I know it's super common for these fans to fail. You know, it could just be this resistor. I'll show you right, this one that's bad, because I know this fan turns on because I've heard it turn on when the car starts to overheat, but it only turns on for that. Like when this thing gets at its max temperature, it'll kick the fan on. That's why her car's not overheating, because the fan does turn on, but it's not being controlled through like the AC unit. Let's look for fuses that are associated with this and see if we could find anything. Okay, so I found
mini fuse.
Where is it? Number 21. So I went ahead and looked it up right here on the legend, and I pulled it out. It would be this 15 amp, and it's still intact. So the only other fuses I see here are J-case fuses, numbers 8 and 9, which are going to be right next to each other right here. So one's a high speed, one's a low speed. And honestly guys, looking at them, the high speed looks like it's intact, but the low speed definitely looks blown out. So I found out that here on the fuse box there is a J-case fuse. It's a 40 amp. Now of course the one that's bad here is a 60. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, right? So we're gonna go ahead and use the 40 amp that was right here. As you can see, I already got it, and we're gonna try to get this one out. You can see I already knocked the little cover off of this one trying to get to this, so that's unfortunate, but it's kind of what happens with these JK fuses. I mean, when you try to remove them, the little lid naturally just falls off. Hopefully you guys can see that. I think it's blown. So what I'm going to do is And don't worry, we're gonna end up replacing this since the little cover on it's missing. We'll get a new fuse for a new 40 amp. So let's put that in its place. We know this fuse works. Sure, it may blow that fuse if the fans really are bad like I'm suspecting. Okay, so the fuse has been replaced. I put both of these relays back in. I got my jumper here, and when I hit the switch, still we get nothing. And I do have the key in the on position inside the car, and I've already tried my relay jumper in this one right here, and still nothing. All right, and the fuse looks like it's still good. It doesn't look like it's blown yet, at least from what I could see. So yeah, guys, that tells me this fan is no good. I don't know what else to say about this. I think we're pretty much done here. So one final test, I was able to get off the connector going to the cooling fan resistor. You can see it right there. So I installed my relay bypass tools again, and these two pins right here, the two that I got my thumb pointing at, whenever I turn on my bypass relay, each of them get power at different times depending on which relay you turn on, whether you turn on this relay or the one that goes right there. So that tells me that power is making it all the way up to this resistor. Honestly, guys, it's like I said, it's beating a dead horse here. Okay, I'm pretty sure this fan assembly is cooked. So we'll go ahead and plug this in. We are done. So it's a few weeks later, and we are back with this Buick, and it's here to get that new radiator fan put on. But now that it's here, it has another problem. So we're starting to go into winter, so everyone's starting to use their heat now. And she said as of like 2 weeks ago, the heat stopped working. Now the blower motor is still blowing, it's just cold air. Not like AC cold, it's just, you know, like outside temperature. Basically, there's no heat. I could hear something moving, like I could hear the actuator moving. So that seems to be working. Yeah, so anyway, let's pull it into the garage. We have to replace that cooling fan now, as well as find out why this heat doesn't work, because I don't think they're related. All right, so just pulled it into the garage. Now I'm checking the hoses going to the heater core back here, and this lower one feels, I wouldn't say hot, it feels warm. And she just drove over here. It's probably like a 30-40 minute drive, you know, so everything should be up to operating temperature. So the bottom one I want to say is the inlet, feels pretty warm, but the top one, I mean, it's even hard to call that warm to the touch. So we may be dealing with a blocked or clogged heater core, and that's why we're not getting any heat into the cabin. Well, before we go crazy on this stuff and just assuming that the heater core is restricted, look at the coolant level. I don't see any coolant in here. So basically, if the coolant level drops low enough, the coolant can't really make its way into that heater core. In essence, no heat. So I think that would be our best case here. I mean, and if you look at all of this mess right here, you could see traces down there. See all the white residue? That's all traces of coolant leaking. So I'm not surprised that this cooling system is low on antifreeze. We are not going to put coolant in this thing right away. We're going to use this to our advantage because we have to get this fan out of here still. So I don't know if I'm going to have to drain any coolant or whatever, move whatever I have to get this stuff out of the way and get the fan out. And I don't want to have to drain out coolant that I just put in. So let's deal with the fan issue first while the system is more or less drained. And once we get that all situated, we'll go ahead, top off the cooling system and see if we get our heat back. I got the fan out of here, and this thing is a freaking nightmare. You can see I even started removing stuff from up here. Even though the fan comes out of here, I just wanted to be able to pull the radiator a little bit towards the front of the car just to give me a little bit more clearance. But it is an absolute nightmare to get this thing out. And there goes the new fan, the old one's right there. So if it was a pain in the butt to get out, you know, it's going to be the same exact way, if not worse, going back in. So that sucks, because the thing like this, whenever you have a fan that's difficult to remove, my biggest concern is the radiator. It's so easy to puncture a radiator when you're trying to stuff something in there like a fan. So it's why I normally put cardboard to try to give a little bit of a buffer to that radiator, but that doesn't always help. So it's just, I hate jobs like this because, you know, you quote for something so simple. And by the way, what I quoted was way below what this job actually is. And again, you know, we're just helping out a friend, you know what I mean? It's why I quoted so low. This is way more difficult than I anticipated. Anyway, let's go ahead and try to get this new fan assembly inside of here. Surprisingly, the new fan assembly went in easier than the old one came out. So you can see, got it in place, got the two 10 mils holding it down. I plugged in the electrical connector just so we could go ahead and test things right now. Reconnected the battery, and let's go ahead and try this again. I'm gonna hit the switch for the low speed fan, and there goes our low speed fan, guys. Turn it off. Everything's working. I'm gonna go ahead, disconnect the battery again, and finish putting all this stuff back together. I'm almost done assembling everything right here. I just have to go ahead and top off the coolant. Now, we already tested the low speed fan. We know it works. So we have to test the medium and the high. So this relay right here is gonna be the high. And that works. And this relay right here is gonna be the medium speed. And that works. I'm sure you guys can hear the fan turning on. So everything works. I'm gonna go ahead, pop the relays back in it, top off the cooling system, and not only let's see if we have our heat returning, but let's see if the AC works. Because if you remember correctly, this was my main suspicion on why the AC stopped working, is because this cooling fan resistor went out. There we have it. The original 40 that's still good went back in its place. We have a new 40 right here and a new 60 right there. So I'm still in the process of bleeding the cooling system, but we already have heat. This thing came in with no heat at all, just blowing cold air. And you can see we are already up to about 170 degrees. And like I said, I still have to finish bleeding the cooling system, so it's only going to get better. But definitely really nice hot air blowing out of here. Unfortunately, I still can't get the AC to work, even though all the fans are working. I obviously turned on the AC button, and I could hear the compressor clutch kick in, and the compressor starts running, yet no cold air, no AC. So I don't know what's going on. One thing that I did notice is, even though when you command the AC to turn on, the compressor clutch kicks in, but we still don't get any fan speed. That's interesting, because whenever you turn on your AC, the fan should automatically kick on, and that's not happening. So I guess it would have to require a little bit more diagnosis and dig into this, see what's actually going on with that. But now we know we have a working fan assembly. So I just talked to the owner, and she does not care about the AC working at the moment. Like I said, we're going into winter. She said as long as the heat works, she's fine. I told her about the leak and how it has to get addressed, or else this same exact issue is going to happen once the coolant gets low enough. So yeah, that's going to be a different repair going on there. But that's just about it. So let's take it out for a test drive.